bully.
Always. Hey, aren't cold opens Lee's thing?
Terminator Salvation tells the story of John Connor right in the thick of the war against the machines, trying to locate his father Kyle Reese and make one large move against Skynet. Welcome back to the Terminator Reviews, everybody. If you've been following along with me for the first 3 reviews, I have been doing these reviews alongside Sean Chandler from Sean Chandler Talks About and my buddy Durbin from Durbania, and we're also joined by a newcomer, Film Trigger. So all 4 of these guys are going to have, or all 4 of us I should say, are going to have reviews dropped. Durbin's and Film Triggers are already out, but me and Sean will be dropping these simultaneously, so as soon as you see my face, his face is over at his channel talking about Terminator Salvation. So as soon as you're done with this review, check out these other guys' reviews, subscribe to their channels, please, and see where all of our thoughts on this 4th film in the franchise might differ or be the same. Now, Terminator Salvation is an interesting movie inside of this franchise. It's the only one that does not have Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's the only one that does not have some sort of a templated plot to it that mimics the first movie or the second movie. It's a very different take on this franchise. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I think that it is the most underrated and underappreciated entry in this entire franchise. It baffles me and boggles my mind whenever I see people put this like at the bottom of their ranking or say that this is the worst in the franchise. I don't get it. So I'm going to give you all the reasons why I think that Terminator Salvation is actually pretty damn good. So starting off with the positives for Terminator Salvation, one thing that I really like about this one is that it tries to do something different, and that is more than you can say for basically every other movie in this franchise. Genesis does to a certain degree, we'll get to that one next, but you get to, the first 2 movies are classics, but Terminator 2 definitely takes a lot of pages out of the books of the first movie, does it brilliantly. Terminator 3 just takes a templated plot, tries to do another Terminator movie for a quick buck. Terminator Salvation genuinely tries to do something different and something unique with this source material. It tries to go into the future or in the past, depending on how you view the timeline, to the actual war. It tries to make it a war movie. It tries to make it about John Connor while he is this prophet, this person who's going to lead humanity to their ultimate salvation. And it had the balls to do it without relying on the things that any other Terminator film would rely on, like bringing Arnold Schwarzenegger back at all costs, going through the entire plot again about him being sent back in time to protect someone. They tried to do something different, and I have to give credit for that. Moving on from that, I actually like the fact that this movie fits really nicely in the timeline, really no matter what movies you consider canon. You can ignore Terminator 3, you can totally put Terminator 3 in there. This movie is both a prequel and a sequel in a lot of ways. You can view it as a sequel to the 3 movies, and you can view it as a prequel because it kind of takes place before the whole time travel thing. It's a very interesting little placement with this whole little full circle movement of the Terminator timeline, but I like the fact that this movie flows well, whether you watch it before the original Terminator or it flows after Terminator 2 or Terminator 3. It's kind of cool how it works that way. And I actually like the story. I like the take that they took on these characters and this lore, this franchise, where you have John Connor in this placement where you've been told as an audience member and he's been told as a character since birth that he's going to be the one that leads humanity to victory over the machines. And they start this movie in a place where you have some people that buy into that and some people that reject it and think that he's nobody and think that he's a little bit whacked out of his head and don't want to hear anything that he has to say. And I like the fact that they take you on that journey. You could have very easily just put John Connor to where that everybody comes out of the rubble from the nuclear war and they're just like, all right, I'm following this dude. But I like the fact that it's kind of realistic in the sense that there's military leaders from all over the world that are kind of trying to pull everything together, and you got this guy saying, oh, my mother knew all about this and she says that I'm going to save all of us, so you need to listen to me. And they're like, bitch, who are you? It's realistic. And I like the fact that he kind of has that struggle as a character, because John Connor, love him in the second movie, but in 3 and in 5, he's not utilized very well. He's utilized well here, and it does expand a bit on his characteristics from Terminator 2. Added in with the whole storyline that Marcus brings to this, where, he was this criminal, this killer. They don't get completely into what he did, but he caused deaths. to where he kind of is on this path to redemption, and he's on this path to kind of right his wrongs at any cost to a certain degree. And he gets thrust into this lore with Kyle Reese and John Connor and this War of the Machines that he just wakes up and it's just in the middle of it all. Everything's already happened. His whole aspect of the story is really interesting too. And there's something I'm going to get into in my negatives that would have made it even better, but I like the whole aspect too of him being this modified human where he is part man and part machine, because it kind of brings up those ideological questions about what makes a human, what makes a machine. It kind of tests John Connor to a certain degree because he's so jaded against machines that he's automatically just destined to not trust this guy at all and assume that he's there to kill him, which he absolutely assumes right off the bat. And he kind of has to learn and grow as a character about where you blur those lines and just all these things that this movie explores. It has a lot to say, and I think that it says it well.
You and me, we've been at war since before either of us even existed. You tried killing my mother, Sarah Connor. You killed my father, Kyle Reese. You will not kill me.
And I've kind of been interweaving talking about this along with the story, but I also really like these casting and takes on these characters. I think that, or not even really arguably, I think it's definite that Christian Bale is the best John Connor outside of Edward Furlong. Not a whole lot of competition, not a very high bar, but he's the only other performance of this character that I can latch into and say, okay, I buy this as John Connor. This is a guy that I could see people following into battle. And I like that. I like his whole take. I like Christian Bale's, as an actor, I love him. I mean, Christian Bale, he's the shit. But I like the fact that he's a little bit, not necessarily one-dimensional, but he's very focused. And he's at that point in his life where, okay, I've been told my entire life I'm going to be this guy. Now it's time for me to be this guy. So he's all about the mission. He's all about saving people. He's all about going against what, the higher ups are saying if it's not really in tune with his morality. I like that whole take that he brings to this character that's very different from the younger attitude that we get from Edward Furlong. That is iconic, but I think it's a good follow-up. I could see that character, the Edward Furlong version in T2, growing up to be this Christian Bale version of John Connor. I actually really like Sam Worthington as well in the role of Marcus. Now, he was kind of in that space right when this movie came out where Hollywood was kind of shoving him in your face. Hollywood likes to get cocky sometimes and find the new actor and just kind of shove him into a lot of things and is like, here's your new movie star, love him, love him. Sam Worthington was one of those guys, and I think that he's a very good actor, and I think he actually works really well now that he's kind of gotten away from that and kind of gotten away from the overexposure. But this is one of those roles that I think that his acting actually really kind of lends itself nicely to. He's got a nice attitude. I believe that he's a badass whenever he has these little badass fight scenes and everything, but there's enough complicated sense about his character that I'm intrigued about him. I don't completely trust him, I don't completely like him, but I'm so intrigued by him that I want to follow this guy and see where his story goes. And then you get Anton Yelchin, and probably the role that would be easiest to screw up in Kyle Reese. And gotta love Anton, rest his peace, because he was great in most movies that I saw him in, and I really wish he could have lived longer. Not just so we could get movies, obviously, but he was always great in most of the movies that I saw. But here, just like with Christian Bale, the kind of reverse age effect, I can totally buy into his take on Kyle Reese eventually turning into the Michael Biehn Kyle Reese. He's got enough believable attitude in him. He's got enough naivety to where it fits his young age and kind of his entry into the resistance. And I like the fact that you also get this relationship between him and Marcus, where Marcus kind of shows him and teaches him some of the things that you see Michael Biehn do and Michael Biehn kind of take hold of in the original Terminator movie. The only thing really missing from this one, and unfortunately it's because they were planning more movies that they never got to make, is John Connor actually handing Kyle Reese a picture of Sarah Connor. That's the one element that I miss. I wish I could have seen that scene in this movie, but Other than that, I like what Anton Yelchin brings to this role, and just like I said with Christian Bale, I totally feel like his version of the character lines up well with the character that we know from the original Terminator played by Michael Biehn, and that's a very fine line, slippery slope that they have to play, and I think that they nailed it with both of them. Now, as far as action, because this is predominantly a war film, this is very post-apocalyptic, the world is basically ravaged from the nuclear war, from the bombs dropping on Judgment Day, and it's about this, tight-knit band of survivors, the Resistance, going against the machines and encountering a lot of different models of the machines, which I'll get into as well, because it's another positive of mine. But as far as the action, the warfare, the gunplay, the explosions, the road chases, and the carnage that happens from these huge Terminators all the way down to little small Terminators that are like big snakes, pretty kick-ass movie. I gotta be honest. Like, if you're going for action, this movie does deliver that. McG gets a lot of hate, and I haven't seen all of his films, so maybe it's deserved to a certain degree. I certainly have not seen Charlie's Angels 1 or 2, which he's most well known for, but I'm actually a big fan of This Means War, and I really like this film, and I think that he does a great job at directing it. It's shot perfectly. I think that the look of the movie is great. It has that kind of gray tone to it, which definitely has that post-apocalyptic kind of ickiness that fits this world, fits this tone. And action-wise, damn near the entire movie, action set piece galore. I mean, from the very opening shot, whenever you get, well, as soon as you get past the opening shot of Marcus and his kind of origins, as soon as you see John Connor get off of this plane and shoot this T-600 or 700, whatever the hell it is, in the head, from then on, it's like warfare, action, explosions, chase scene, all the way through to the end when you have a lot of fisticuffs going on between robots and machines. So they pretty much got all bases covered with action, and I think all of it's pretty damn good. Now, like I almost started talking about the different versions of Terminators we get in this. I said in my previous review that one of the issues that this franchise has is they continuously try to one-up the T-1000. They try to upgrade the villain, they try to make the villain more advanced, more threatening, and they fall on their face every single time because the T-1000, as far as I'm concerned, and the way that they portrayed it, is the pinnacle of technology. You're not gonna get anything that's better or cooler or more intimidating or more effective than that, so stop trying. And in Terminator Salvation, they don't. They don't even bother trying to do that. They have actually downscaled a lot of the models. They show a lot of the early models of Cyberdyne and Skynet, where you get T-600s that are kind of like the early versions of Terminators that you heard Michael Biehn talk about in the first one that weren't quite right yet, and you could spot them easily in a crowd. They were just effective enough at a distance. You get to see gigantic machines that are just there to grab people, almost like War of the Worlds. You get to see the hunter killers that we've seen in all of these movies. You get to see the motorcycle ones. I don't even remember what the fuck they were called, but those are badass, where it's just like a motorcycle with an eye. And you get the snake ones, like all these different models of Terminators. They're downscaled, they're not as advanced as the T-800 or the T-1000, but they're effective as villains. It's more quantity, but they actually work. There's a lot of different threats. They can get you on the road, they can get you from the sky, they can get you in the water, and I thought they were really creative and effective at creating all these different models that we had not seen before. I'd like to see them again. Now moving into my mixed aspects, and I have one, and that is fan service. There are things in this movie that, like whenever Marcus Phoenix shows, Gears of War, yep, I'm a fan. Whenever you get Marcus right, and he's showing Kyle Reese the whole trick about tying the shotgun to his arm that he utilizes in the first movie, when you see like John Connor get his scars that we see him in the intro of Terminator 2, subtle things like that that just line the timeline up. I love those aspects of fan service.
No way! You son of a bitch!
The fan service that I don't like, and it's because this franchise does it way too fucking often, is when they just throw out like one-liners or like, iconic moments from other movies. Like, can we get a Terminator movie where somebody does not say, "I'll be back"? I don't think it's necessary. It's not really corny when they do it here, and it makes sense for when he says it. Like, it's not like they just shoehorn it into this weird scene, but I just don't need that. When you get that, and you get other little callbacks that are mostly dialogue, like whenever, even when Kyle Reese says, "Come with me if you want to live," even though he's the one that said that originally, I'm like, that's such an obvious line. Come with me if you want to live. Like, create some more iconic lines. Don't keep going back to the fucking well, because they were great in the first two movies. The more you use them, the more they diminish. All the way down to the scene with the CGI Arnold, the unveil of the first T-800. Now, that scene in and of itself is awesome, and it's a great way to throw in a villain, throw in that ultimate like intimidation factor, because it's been more quantity as far as villains. This is like, this is the Terminator. This is what you have feared all along.
Connor's Kyle, help!
And it's a great way to kind of have a climax of this movie. But the CGI Arnold face, although I don't know if you could really get around it, I think that it's a fan service moment that's almost required. If you're gonna have the T-800, it needs to look like Arnold. The CGI, I guess, that has not aged very well. When I first saw this movie, I thought it was cool. Now I watch it and it's really distracting. Like, as soon as the skin gets melted off and it's just the endoskeleton of the T-800, I think that sequence is way more effective. So I'm almost curious if they had just had the T-800 come out and like that familiar endoskeleton, everybody would have had a better reaction to it. But seeing a CGI Arnold face, that kind of leans into fan service that I don't necessarily think that we need. Now, moving into the negatives, the main one is that I do have some pretty sizable logic issues with this movie. And that's something I actually didn't really even go into that much with Terminator 3. Terminator 3 has a load of logic issues, but that movie is so silly in tone that it's almost not even worth bringing up. Of course, they don't give a fuck about the story. But this movie is much more grounded in tone, much more serious, and has a lot more ambition. So it stands out a little bit more when things don't make sense. And one major plot element of this movie that has always bugged me, and even though I have not rewatched this in a long time, it immediately stood out as something weird when I watched it last night. And that is the whole Cyberdyne or Skynet plot to get John Connor to Skynet, like where they kidnap Kyle Reese, or they kind of put data out there that they're looking for Kyle Reese. That's their #1 target, which gets John Connor on the hunt for him, and they utilize Marcus without controlling him whatsoever to kind of get Kyle Reese kidnapped so that he will eventually take John Connor. It's just very convoluted, and there's this element of what the fuck throughout the entire thing where I look at it and I go, okay, Skynet, you obviously know who Kyle Reese is because you're using him to manipulate John Connor, which is another question I'll get into in a minute. But if you finally get him, why wouldn't they just kill him? Yeah, it might not get rid of the John Connor of this timeline. I don't know exactly how that rule works inside of the Terminator universe because we haven't seen it yet, but if they have him, they could just kill him. Now, there's the argument that Marcus is going to be, looking for Kyle Reese, and that's what draws John Connor to the base. So if he was dead, he would never call John Connor in the first place. But I just feel like John Connor would be easy to get if he was continuously on the hunt for Kyle Reese anyway. I don't know. It doesn't take me out of the movie. It doesn't bug me to the point where I don't like the movie by any means. But it's something where it just doesn't quite make sense to me with this huge, convoluted, epic plan that they would have the father of their target and they don't do anything with him. They just put him in a cage. Beyond that, if they have the ability to kind of manipulate the resistance into thinking that, like, they put this signal out there for the resistance to find, knowing that the resistance is going to find it and say, ooh, we can use this to kill Terminators now. If they can do that, and they can put data out there that lets the resistance know that their main target is Kyle Reese, their second target is John Connor, if they're able to get that information out there and they know that the resistance is going to obtain it somehow, couldn't they just put info out there that they have a prisoner named Kyle Reese? That's another thing that kind of bugged me the entire time. Again, I understand a movie needs things like this to not make sense to make the plot work, but they don't really make sense whenever you look at how epically smart Skynet is supposed to be. Now, the other thing that I don't understand, which maybe this is just something that I just purely don't get. Maybe they explained it in the movie, maybe you can explain it to me down in the comment section below. How does Skynet know about Kyle Reese in the first place? And how do they know that they've had so many failed attempts to kill John Connor? Like when you have Helena Bonham Carter give that whole speech where Skynet's using her likeness and saying, you've done what Skynet has failed to do time and time again. You've killed John Connor. The whole timeline thing, the whole time displacement technology doesn't even exist yet, because immediately when they get that technology, they send the T-800 back, and then John Connor sends back Kyle Reese, which doesn't happen for like another 10 years or so if you look at the timeline here. So how does Skynet know that they've sent motherfuckers back in time and they've failed? I don't get that. Please explain that to me. And my final negative for this movie, it's not this movie's fault at all, but fuck whoever made the marketing for Terminator Salvation. You blew the entire plot twist or plot reveal that Marcus was actually part machine. And I don't know if that was the studio's like intention, if they never wanted that to be a plot twist. It doesn't feel like the movie's set up that way. It feels like it's meant to be this big moment of, holy shit, the dude's the Terminator. And kind of have you wonder what the hell the plot is. Is he gonna be a bomb? Is he actually programmed and Skynet's just gonna tap into him at the right moment to kill John Connor? It feels like the movie's set up that way to create doubt, so you kind of go along that journey with John Connor about who is this guy and can I trust him? But because in the marketing, they basically opened it up with the whole scene where he's chained up and he's like, you think you're human? And pulls the chain off and he looks down, no! Because they show that in the trailer, you walk into this movie knowing that the dude is from Skynet. Now, the opening scene of the movie kind of gives that away to anybody that's paying attention. Whenever he signs away his body and you see Cyberdyne up there, you kind of know where it's heading. So I think they could have manipulated the beginning a little bit if they were going for that. If they were intending that being like a plot reveal, you could have just had him sign his life away and not show the paper. But the marketing really blew what could have been a really great reveal. And I'll never know if that reveal would have been effective or not, because I always walked into this movie from the very first time that I watched it, knowing where things were eventually heading with the character Marcus. But overall, guys, like I've said, I actually really enjoy Terminator Salvation. I don't get the hate for it. I understand a lot of people just want to see Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator movies, but for me, after Terminator 3 kind of shit the bed a bit, this is a really nice addition to this franchise that I actually would have preferred to see that trilogy seen through and see where these characters would have went with the whole 3-arc trilogy. But Terminator Salvation, not necessarily as iconic as the first two movies. I obviously get that it doesn't have necessarily the timeless appeal of those first two movies, but as far as quality, I think this beats Genesis and Terminator 3 all to hell. So if you're a fan of the Terminator franchise and you finally want to see what the war against the machines look like, this is a great exploration of that era of the lore. So walk into it with different expectations for what you know a Terminator film to be, and I think you will enjoy it, and then go out and buy it. What do you guys think of Terminator Salvation? Are you a fan of this one? Do you despise it? Please give me your reasons down below why you don't like it. If you just don't enjoy movies that don't focus on the Terminator template, I guess I understand, but if you have legit criticisms of this movie of why it's a failure, please let me know down below, because I honestly do not get it. I think it's pretty damn good. So let me know your thoughts on Terminator Salvation, and keep your eyes peeled this coming Tuesday for Terminator Genesis, and then next weekend, so Friday and Saturday, for not only my Terminator Dark Fate review, but also a Terminator Dark Fate spoiler discussion, which will probably be on Sean's channel, and then sometime either on Saturday or Sunday, a Terminator ranking. So keep your eyes peeled for all of that, and hit that subscribe button if you're not a subscriber so you do not miss any of that awesome shit. Like and share this video. Check the video description below for all the links to all of my buddies' reviews of this film and see where they stood on it. Also in the video description is social media links where you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. My Patreon page as well is down below. It's a great way to give back to this channel and help this channel grow and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. And just below that is my Teespring shelf. So if you scroll down right now, you'll see it. It's got all my merchandise designs. You've got t-shirts, there's mugs, bags, socks, all kinds of stuff you can throw these awesome designs on. We've got 31 on 31 coming up. There's designs down there for that, 3 different ones. I've got Autopsy Stream, which is very popular. Please check out that merchandise down below. And if you guys want to check out some more of my videos, including all of my previous Terminator reviews, you can check those out by clicking right over here.